In the vast expanse of the galaxy, countless alien species coexisted in a delicate balance of power and diplomacy. The galactic community, as it was known, was a tapestry of diverse cultures, each with its own unique traditions, technologies, and ways of life. From the elegant and sophisticated Ilari to the hardy and resourceful Krix, the galaxy was a melting pot of civilizations. Among these species, a new player had recently emerged: the humans. Having achieved interstellar travel only a few decades ago, humanity was eager to make its mark on the galactic stage. They were a curious and adventurous lot, always seeking to explore and understand the wonders of the universe. However, the humans quickly discovered that the galaxy was not always a friendly place. Many species viewed them with suspicion or even hostility, seeing them as upstarts who had yet to prove their worth. The humans struggled to find allies and make their voice heard in the galactic community. But there was one species that stood apart from the rest, a species that was shrouded in mystery and fear: the Zorgans. Whispered about in hushed tones, the Zorgans were regarded as the deadliest predators in the galaxy. Their reputation was one of savagery and brutality, and few had ever encountered them and lived to tell the tale. The Zorgans were a subject of great fascination and terror among the galactic community. Some claimed that they possessed technology far beyond anything the other species had ever seen, while others spoke of their vicious hunting practices and their insatiable appetite for conquest. Despite the warnings and concerns of their fellow species, the humans remained undeterred in their quest for knowledge. They believed that every species, no matter how dangerous or misunderstood, had something to offer and could be approached with an open mind and a willingness to learn. It was this belief that led to the formation of a daring scientific expedition to study the Zorgans in their natural habitat. The team was composed of some of humanity's brightest minds, each driven by a thirst for discovery and a desire to push the boundaries of what was possible. Among them was Lyra, a young and ambitious explorer with a keen interest in xenobiology. She had always been fascinated by the diversity of life in the galaxy and had dreamed of one day making contact with a truly alien species. As the expedition prepared to embark on their journey, Lyra couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. She knew that they were venturing into uncharted territory and that the risks were high. But she also knew that the potential rewards were immeasurable. The galactic community watched with bated breath as the human ship set out towards the Zorgan homeworld. Some praised the humans for their bravery and curiosity, while others condemned them as foolhardy and reckless. But Lyra and her team were determined to see their mission through, no matter the cost. They knew that they were not just representing humanity, but the entire galactic community. And they were determined to prove that even the most fearsome and misunderstood species could be approached with empathy and understanding. As the ship hurtled through the stars, Lyra couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Would they find the Zorgans to be the monsters that everyone feared, or would they discover something entirely unexpected? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same after this historic encounter between humanity and the deadliest predator in the known universe. As the human expedition drew closer to the Zorgan homeworld, the anticipation among the crew members grew. They had spent months preparing for this moment, studying every scrap of information they could find about the elusive species. But now, as they approached their destination, they realized just how little they truly knew. Leading the expedition was Lyra, a brilliant and adventurous explorer who had made it her life's mission to seek out new forms of life and learn from them. She had faced many challenges in her career, but nothing quite like this. The Zorgan homeworld was a harsh and unforgiving place, with a thick atmosphere that blocked out most of the sun's light and a landscape of jagged cliffs and deep chasms. As the human ship descended towards the surface, Lyra and her team could see no signs of civilization or technology. But they knew that the Zorgans were there, lurking in the shadows and watching their every move. As soon as the ship touched down, Lyra and her team set to work. They established a base camp and began to explore the surrounding area. taking samples and recording their observations. At first, they saw no sign of the Zorgans. The landscape was eerily quiet, with only the occasional gust of wind or distant rumble of thunder to break the silence. But then, on the third day of their mission, everything changed. Lyra was out on a solo scouting mission, following a narrow path that wound its way through a dense forest of twisted trees and thorny undergrowth. She had been walking for hours, her mind focused on the task at hand, when she suddenly heard a sound that made her blood run cold. It was a low, guttural growl, like nothing she had ever heard before. She froze in her tracks, her heart pounding in her chest as she scanned the surrounding area for any sign of movement. And then she saw it. A massive, shadowy figure emerged from the trees, its eyes glowing in the dim light. It was a Zorgan, and it was staring right at her. Lyra's first instinct was to run, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had trained for this moment, and she knew that any sudden movements could trigger the Zorgan's predatory instincts. Instead, she slowly raised her hands in a gesture of peace and spoke softly, using the few words of the Zorgan language that she had learned. "I mean you no harm," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I come in peace." The Zorgan cocked its head to the side, as if trying to understand her words. Then, to Lyra's amazement, it took a step forward and let out a low, rumbling sound that almost sounded like a purr. Lyra's heart raced as she realized what was happening. The Zorgan was not attacking her, but rather showing curiosity. It was a moment of pure wonder, a glimpse into a world that few had ever seen. Over the next few hours, Lyra and the Zorgan communicated through a series of gestures and simple vocalizations. She learned that its name was Zak, and that it was a member of a small clan that lived in the surrounding area. As the sun began to set, Lyra knew that she had to return to the base camp, but she also knew that this was just the beginning of something incredible. She had made contact with a Zorgan, and in doing so, had taken the first step towards understanding a species that had long been shrouded in mystery and fear. The galaxy would never be the same, and Lyra couldn't wait to see what the future held. As Lyra returned to the base camp, her mind was racing with the incredible encounter she had just experienced. She couldn't wait to share the news with her team and begin studying the Zorgan in more detail. However, as she approached the camp, she noticed a flurry of activity and a sense of unease among her colleagues. They had been monitoring the communications from the galactic community and had received some troubling news. The other species had gotten wind of the human expedition to the Zorgan homeworld and were not happy about it. They saw it as a reckless and dangerous move that could potentially upset the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. Some were even calling for the humans to be sanctioned or expelled from the galactic community altogether. Lyra knew that she had to act fast to prevent the situation from escalating. She called a meeting with her team and explained what had happened during her encounter with Zak. At first, some of her colleagues were skeptical. They had heard the stories about the Zorgans and found it hard to believe that one could be anything other than a vicious predator. But as Lyra shared more details about her interaction with Zak, they began to see the potential for a new understanding between the two species. Over the next few days, Lyra and her team worked tirelessly to gather more information about the Zorgans. They conducted observations from a distance and even managed to capture some footage of the creatures in their natural habitat. What they discovered was truly remarkable. The Zorgans were not the mindless killers that everyone had assumed them to be. They had a complex social structure and a sophisticated system of communication that was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Lyra knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to bridge the gap between two vastly different cultures. She reached out to Zak and the other Zorgans, using the limited vocabulary she had learned to convey her intentions. To her surprise, the Zorgans were receptive to the idea of further contact with the humans. They seemed curious about these strange new creatures and were willing to learn more about them. Lyra and her team set up a series of meetings with the Zorgans, carefully choosing neutral locations that would not be seen as a threat by either side. At first, the meetings were tense and awkward, with both sides unsure of how to communicate effectively. But as time went on, a bond began to form between Lyra and Zack. They spent hours together, learning about each other's cultures and ways of life. Lyra taught Zack about human concepts like art, music, and storytelling, while Zack shared the rich history and traditions of the Zorgans. As word of their unusual friendship spread throughout the galaxy, other species began to take notice. Some were still wary of the Zorgans and didn't trust the humans' intentions. But others saw the potential for a new era of cooperation and understanding between different cultures. Lyra knew that there was still a long way to go before the Zorgans could be fully accepted by the galactic community, but she was determined to keep working towards that goal, one small step at a time. And as she looked into Zack's eyes and saw the curiosity and intelligence there, she knew that she had made the right choice. The galaxy was a vast and wondrous place, full of endless possibilities, and with the help of her new friend, Lyra was ready to explore them all. As Lyra and Zack's friendship continued to grow, they found themselves spending more and more time together. They would often take long walks through the Zorgan forests, discussing their respective cultures and sharing stories from their pasts. Lyra learned that the Zorgans had a rich history that stretched back thousands of years. They had once been a warlike species, constantly fighting amongst themselves for territory and resources. But over time, they had evolved and developed a more peaceful way of life. Zack, in turn, was fascinated by the human concept of empathy. He had never encountered a species that placed such a high value on understanding and caring for others. In Zorgan society, strength and dominance were the most prized qualities. As they spent more time together, Lyra and Zack began to realize that they had more in common than they ever could have imagined. They both had a deep curiosity about the world around them and a desire to learn and grow. Lyra even introduced Zack to some of her favorite human pastimes, like music and art. Zack was initially skeptical, but soon found himself drawn to the strange and beautiful sounds and colors that Lyra showed him. Meanwhile, back at the base camp, the rest of the human expedition was making progress of their own. They had started to establish tentative relationships with some of the other Zorgans, sharing information and resources. The galactic community, however, was still divided on how to handle the situation. Some saw the human-Zorgan friendship as a positive development, a sign that even the most seemingly incompatible species could find common ground. Others, however, remained deeply suspicious of the Zorgans and their intentions. They argued that the humans were being naive, and that the Zorgans were simply biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike. Lyra knew that she had to do something to bridge the gap between the two sides. She decided to invite a delegation of galactic community leaders to the Zorgan homeworld to see for themselves the progress that had been made. At first, the leaders were hesitant. They had heard the stories about the Zorgans and were not eager to put themselves in harm's way. But Lyra was persuasive, and eventually they agreed to make the journey. When they arrived on the Zorgan homeworld, they were greeted by a sight that few of them had ever expected to see. Humans and Zorgans were working together, sharing knowledge and resources in a way that seemed almost impossible. Lyra and Zack gave the delegation a tour of the Zorgan village, showing them the intricate carvings and artworks that adorned the walls of the buildings. They even sat down to a meal together, sharing food and drink in a gesture of friendship and trust. The galactic community leaders were impressed by what they saw. They began to see the Zorgans in a new light, not as monsters to be feared, but as a species with their own unique culture and way of life. Over the next few days, the delegation met with Lyra and her team, as well as with Zack and other Zorgan leaders. They discussed ways in which the two species could work together, sharing knowledge and resources for the betterment of all. It was a historic moment, one that would be remembered for generations to come. The human-Zorgan friendship had started as a small spark, but it had grown into a beacon of hope for the entire galaxy. Lyra and Zack knew that there was still much work to be done, but they also knew that they had started something truly special. Together, they had shown that even the most unlikely of allies could find common ground and work towards a brighter future for all. As the news of the human-Zorgan friendship spread throughout the galaxy, It sparked a wave of curiosity and excitement among the other species. Many began to wonder if they too could establish similar relationships with the Zorgans and other misunderstood species. Lyra and Zack found themselves at the center of this newfound interest, and they were often called upon to share their story and insights with others. They traveled to different parts of the galaxy, speaking at conferences and meetings, and encouraging others to keep an open mind when it came to interspecies relations. However, not everyone was thrilled about the growing influence of the human-Zorgan alliance. Some species, particularly those who had long viewed the Zorgans as a threat, began to feel threatened by the idea of a new power dynamic in the galaxy. Tensions began to rise, and there were even whispers of a possible conflict brewing on the horizon. Lyra and Zack knew that they had to act fast to prevent the situation from escalating out of control. They decided to organize a grand summit, inviting representatives from all the major species in the galaxy to come together and discuss ways to promote peace and understanding. It was a risky move, given the delicate nature of the situation, but they believed that it was the only way to move forward. The summit was held on a neutral planet, and Lyra and Zack worked tirelessly to create an atmosphere of openness and trust. They encouraged each species to share their own unique perspectives and experiences, and to listen to others with an open mind. At first, the discussions were tense and heated, with many species expressing their doubts and concerns about the future of the galaxy. But as the days went on, a sense of common purpose began to emerge. Species that had once been bitter enemies found themselves working together to find solutions to shared problems. Ideas were exchanged, and new alliances were formed. It was a remarkable sight to behold, and Lyra and Zack couldn't help but feel a sense of pride at what they had accomplished. As the summit drew to a close, the representatives from each species came together to sign a historic agreement, pledging to work towards a future of peace and cooperation. It was a moment that would go down in galactic history, and Lyra and Zack knew that they had played a crucial role in making it happen. In the weeks and months that followed, the effects of the summit began to ripple throughout the galaxy. Species that had once been isolated and mistrustful of one another began to open up and engage in new forms of collaboration and exchange. Trade routes were established, and new technologies were shared. Cultural exchange programs were set up, allowing individuals from different species to learn from one another and build new relationships. Lyra and Zack watched all of this unfold with a sense of wonder and pride. They knew that there was still much work to be done, but they also knew that they had helped to set the galaxy on a new course, one that was filled with hope and possibility. As they looked out at the stars, they couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for what the future held. They had started out as two unlikely friends from two vastly different worlds, but together they had helped to change the galaxy in ways that they never could have imagined. And as they set out on their next adventure, ready to explore new worlds and make new discoveries, they knew that they would always have each other and the bond that they had forged through their shared experiences. The galaxy was a vast and wondrous place, full of endless possibilities, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. As the galaxy settled into a new era of peace and cooperation, Lyra and Zack found themselves facing a new challenge. A group of Zorgan extremists, who had long opposed any form of contact with outsiders, had begun to plot against the human-Zorgan alliance. These extremists believed that the Zorgans were superior to all other species, and that any form of cooperation or friendship with others was a sign of weakness. They saw Lyra and Zack's efforts as a threat to their way of life, and were determined to put an end to it. At first, Lyra and Zack tried to reason with the extremists, hoping to find a peaceful solution to the conflict. But it soon became clear that the extremists were not interested in negotiation or compromise. They launched a series of attacks against the human expedition, targeting their equipment and supplies. They even went so far as to kidnap several members of the team, holding them hostage in a remote location. Lyra and Zack knew that they had to act fast to prevent the situation from escalating further. They gathered a team of their most trusted allies, both human and Zorgan, and set out to rescue their friends and put an end to the extremist threat. The mission was dangerous and fraught with risk, but Lyra and Zack were determined to see it through. They used all of their skills and knowledge to track down the extremists and infiltrate their hideout. In a tense standoff, Lyra and Zack confronted the leader of the extremists, a fierce Zorgan warrior named Crag. Crag was a formidable opponent, but Lyra and Zack were not afraid. They stood their ground and made it clear that they would not back down. In the end, it was Zack who managed to convince Crag to stand down. He spoke to him in the Zorgan language, appealing to his sense of honor and duty. He reminded Crag of the importance of unity and cooperation, and of the great things that could be achieved when different species worked together. Crag was skeptical at first, but as he listened to Zack's words, he began to see the truth in them. He realized that his actions had been misguided, and that he had allowed his fear and prejudice to cloud his judgment. In a moment of great courage, Crag laid down his weapons and surrendered to Lyra and Zack. He pledged to work towards a new future for the Zorgans, one that was based on peace and understanding. The news of Crag's surrender spread quickly throughout the galaxy, and it was seen as a major victory for the human-Zorgan alliance. Species that had once been wary of the Zorgans began to see them in a new light, and many expressed a desire to learn more about their culture and way of life. Lyra and Zack knew that there was still much work to be done to fully integrate the Zorgans into the galactic community, but they also knew that they had taken a major step forward, and that the future was looking brighter than ever. As they returned to their respective homes, Lyra and Zack knew that they would always be connected by the bond that they had forged. They had started out as two unlikely friends, but they had grown into something much more than that. They were partners, allies, and ambassadors for a new era of peace and cooperation in the galaxy. And as they looked out at the stars, they knew that they would always be ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. The galaxy had been forever changed by their friendship, and they knew that they had played a small but important role in shaping its future. It was a responsibility that they took seriously, and one that they would continue to work towards for the rest of their lives. In the aftermath of the extremist attack and Crag's surrender, the galaxy was abuzz with talk of the human-Zorgan alliance and the role that Lyra and Zack had played in bringing about this new era of peace and cooperation. Species from all corners of the galaxy began to reach out to the humans and the Zorgans, expressing their admiration and respect for what they had accomplished. Many even offered to join the alliance, pledging their support and resources to help build a better future for all. Lyra and Zack were humbled by the outpouring of support, but they knew that there was still much work to be done. They set about establishing new diplomatic channels and trade routes, working to strengthen the bonds between the various species of the galaxy. They also began to share their knowledge and expertise with others, teaching them about the importance of empathy, compassion, and understanding in building strong and lasting relationships. As the weeks and months passed, the galaxy began to change in ways that few could have predicted. Species that had once been bitter enemies began to work together, sharing resources and ideas in ways that had never been possible before. New technologies and innovations began to emerge as the best and brightest minds from across the galaxy came together to solve the most pressing challenges facing their worlds. Lyra and Zack watched all of this unfold with a sense of pride and accomplishment. They knew that they had played a small but important role in bringing about this new era of peace and prosperity, and they were grateful for the opportunity to have made a difference. But even as they celebrated their successes, they knew that there was still much work to be done. The galaxy was a vast and complex place, and there would always be new challenges and obstacles to overcome. One of the biggest challenges they faced was finding ways to ensure that the progress they had made would be sustainable in the long term. They knew that it was not enough to simply bring species together. They needed to find ways to build trust and understanding between them, so that the bonds they had forged would endure. To that end, Lyra and Zack began to work on a new initiative, a series of cultural exchange programs that would allow individuals from different species to live and work together, learning from one another and building new relationships. The programs were a resounding success, and soon, individuals from all corners of the galaxy were coming together to share their knowledge, skills, and experiences. As the years passed, Lyra and Zack watched as the galaxy continued to evolve and change. They saw new alliances form and old rivalries fade away, as species learned to work together towards common goals. And through it all, they remained committed to their mission, to build a better future for all the species of the galaxy, one based on peace, cooperation, and understanding. Looking back on all that they had accomplished, Lyra and Zack knew that they had been a part of something truly special. They had started out as two unlikely friends from two vastly different worlds, but together they had helped to change the course of history. And as they looked to the future, they knew that there would always be new challenges to face and new opportunities to explore. But they also knew that they would face them together, side by side, as partners and friends. The galaxy had been forever changed by their efforts, and they knew that they had helped to lay the foundation for a brighter tomorrow. It was a legacy that they would always be proud of, and one that they would continue to build upon for the rest of their lives. Years turned into decades as the galaxy enjoyed an unprecedented era of peace and prosperity, thanks in no small part to the tireless efforts of Lyra, Zack, and their allies. The once unthinkable notion of humans and Zorgans working together had become a shining example of what could be achieved through open-mindedness, compassion, and the courage to challenge long-held prejudices. Lyra and Zack, now respected leaders in their own right, continued to foster cooperation and understanding between the various species of the galaxy. They established educational initiatives, cultural exchange programs, and joint scientific endeavors, all designed to bridge the gaps between disparate cultures and promote a shared sense of purpose. Under their guidance, the galactic community thrived, with new technologies and ideas emerging at an astonishing pace. Diseases that had once ravaged entire populations were eradicated, while cutting-edge advancements in fields like energy production and environmental conservation ensured a sustainable future for all. Yet even as they marveled at the progress they had made, Lyra and Zack never lost sight of the challenges that lay ahead. They knew that true, lasting peace was an ongoing process, requiring constant effort and vigilance to maintain. As they entered their twilight years, Lyra and Zack began to reflect on their extraordinary journey and the profound impact they had made on the galaxy. They often found themselves marveling at the twists and turns of fate that had brought them together. A human explorer and a Zorgan warrior, two unlikely friends who had defied all odds to forge an unbreakable bond. In quiet moments, they would sit together and reminisce about the early days of their friendship, the trials they had faced, and the triumphs they had shared. They spoke of the countless lives they had touched and the enduring legacy they had built, a testament to the power of unity and the indomitable spirit of sentient beings everywhere. And yet, even as they looked back on their accomplishments with pride and satisfaction, they could not shake the feeling that their work was not yet finished. They sensed that somewhere beyond the horizon, new challenges and opportunities awaited, ready to test the strength and resilience of the galactic community they had helped to build. One evening, as they sat gazing up at the stars, a mysterious message arrived, addressed to them both. It spoke of a distant, unexplored region of space where strange and wondrous phenomena had been detected, phenomena that defied explanation and challenged the very foundations of galactic knowledge. Intrigued and invigorated by this new mystery, Lyra and Zack knew that they could not rest on their laurels. The galaxy still needed them, and they still had so much more to give. And so, with the same sense of curiosity, determination, and unwavering friendship that had guided them from the very beginning, Lyra and Zack prepared to embark on their next great adventure. They did not know what lay ahead, nor what challenges they might face, but they knew that they would face them together, side by side, as they always had, two friends, two partners, two champions of peace and understanding in a vast and wondrous galaxy. As they set out once more into the unknown, Lyra and Zack carried with them the hopes and dreams of countless billions, the hopes and dreams of a galaxy that had been forever changed by the power of their friendship. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. As long as Lyra and Zack stood together, there was no obstacle they could not overcome, no challenge they could not surmount, and no dream they could not make a reality. The stars beckoned, and Lyra and Zack answered the call, ready to write the next chapter in their extraordinary story, a story that would echo through the ages, inspiring generations to come and reminding all who heard it of the boundless potential that lies within the heart of every living being.